Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live virtual heritage walk. Um, I'm live from Missouri, and today we are doing an experimental kind of a show where we're trying to take you to Hampi virtually through videos, while I will be sharing with you the stories of the places that we will be witnessing presently. Um, we just gone live, and a lot of people have registered with us on Facebook, and a few people have been provided with a link for the YouTube video. So I do hope that people are watching me live. Nevertheless, let me just give people a few minutes to join us. Is the famous Virupaksha temple. In fact, as we are gliding through these temple ruins, I think the video will stop at a huge temple tower, and that temple tower is the Virupaksha temple. Virupaksha temple is a Shiva temple. It's called Pampak Kshetra. And this is one of the oldest temples existing in India. In fact, it is said that this is the oldest continuously functional temple, older than Kashi Vishwanath temple, because Kashi Vishwanath temple was demolished and rebuilt multiple times. But this temple, which is more than 2000 years old, has been more than 1000 years old, sorry, not 2000, is the oldest continuously worshipped, practicing religious temple in the country. And beyond this temple, you see the river. This is the Tungabhadra River. Historically, it was called Pampak Kshetra. Now, we can probably go back and do the video once again because I was not there when the first part of the video was being showed. So, Ritika, we could probably pause here, go back and start the video once again. And I do hope that my voice is audible. And since I hear Ritika doing this actions, I believe that my voice is audible. Now, the landmass of Hampi, the terrain of Hampi is very, very unique. One of the things that people absolutely love about Hampi when they go there is the kind of um, vista that it gives. When you climb to the hilltops and when you look at the views, the rocks, the boulders, the terrain, the undulating terrains with hillocks and hills, it's unlike any other terrain that you get to see anywhere else in the world. It's unique. In fact, some Western tourists that I meet, when I speak to them in Hampi, they tell me that this is surreal. Watching a sunset from the top of some of these hillocks in Hampi is so surreal that sometimes they say that it feels like you're not on Earth, but on some other planet. Now, the reason why these rockscapes are the way they are, if you look at the rocks, they're as if they're strewn across the landscape, huge boulders, small stones. It seems as if some giant was playing with these rocks and it just scattered all these rocks as if somebody has actually placed them, some giant has placed them in those positions while playing. And it's easy to also imagine why, when Ramayana was written, the mythological reference to this place, Kishkinda, in the Ramayana, talks about the Vanarasena, the monkey kingdom, when they were going to a war with Sri Lanka. They had to build a bridge first because from Rameshwaram to Sri Lanka was the sea, and a bridge was to be built, and this bridge was supposed to be built with a lot of boulders and rocks. And the monkey army of Kishkinda was entrusted with the job of building this bridge. So they went around collecting boulders and stones from all over the place, and they collected all of them and they assembled them here. And from here, they took them to Rameshwaram and they started building the bridge. So the rocks that you see here strewn across the landscape, mythological belief is that these rocks were placed here by the monkey army of Hanuman, and these were collected, gathered, and kept here so that the bridge across the river to Sri Lanka could be built. So it's a beautiful landscape, and it's understandable why this place is inspired mythology, history, religion, belief, whatever you might call it. If you read Ramayana, Ramayana has 7 khandas, the 7 parts of Ramayana. And one of the khandas is called Kishkinda Khanda, the part of Ramayana that happened in the kingdom of Kishkinda. The kingdom of Kishkinda, mythical kingdom of Kishkinda, is nothing but Hampi. Today, if you go to Hampi, you have temples where um, various episodes of Ramayana are associated with these places. For example, the place where Hanuman met Rama for the first time, the place from where Rama fired an arrow at Vali Kasta, killing Vali, and all these associations, the place where Sita Mata threw all her jewels while she was abducted and taken in a Pushpak Viman by Ravana to Sri Lanka. She gathered all her jewels, she tied them in a little package and she threw them from the plane so that somebody could pick them up and probably give it to Rama so that Rama knows that she was abducted. This package eventually was found by Hanuman. And the place where it was believed that those jewels were thrown is not very far from here. It's across the river, and it's a place that is associated with that episode. So every episode, every incident in the Kishkinda Khanda of Ramayana is associated with a place, with a geographical place in Hampi. And the folklore is fascinating, or this mythology, this Ramayana stories. I find them very, very, very fascinating. The stories of Hampi are not just confined to mythology. There's a lot of history as well, because Hampi was the seat of the Vijayanagara kingdom, which was, in those times at least, for 200 years, it was the most powerful kingdom to be ruling this part of the country. And this was between 1336 and 1646. This was, in fact, much before the Mughal kingdom became so powerful. So we could say that before there was a mighty Mughal empire in the north, a couple of centuries before that, we had an empire down here in the Deccan, which was the Vijayanagara Empire, which was trading with the Portuguese, which was trading with the East Asia, and which was called the glorious golden period of the Vijayanagara kingdom in Karnataka. So we have a lot of stories from history of how this empire came to be built by two kings of the Vijayanagara dynasty. They were called the Hakka and Bukka. Now, history again has a mix of oral folklore. There's a lot of folk history, which probably is true or probably is not true. There's no way to ascertain that because these are basically folk stories. But then again, there's also recorded history from the accounts of travelers who visited Hampi during those times. We have, for example, the travelogue of Domingo Pais, a Portuguese traveler who came to Hampi during those times and recorded everything that he saw. We also have the accounts of a lot of Italian, French, Arabian travelers who came to Hampi during the 1300s, 1400s, and 1500s, who've written down exhaustive accounts of the life and times of the Vijayanagara dynasty. So this, we could say, is the written history that, again, is quite fascinating. So the stories in terms of the folklore, in terms of the mythology, in terms of history, in terms of the temple histories of the temples that we see here. Virupaksha temple has an interesting Sthala Purana. Most of these temples are full of stories. You know, every temple has a history called Sthala Puranam, which has been documented for centuries, and it's in written documents in the form of talapatrams and copper plates and inscriptions on the rocks of these temples. And Virupaksha temple, at least the oldest temple in Hampi, has a very interesting temple history, which is the Sthala Puranam of the Virupaksha temple, which I will be sharing with you in some time. So the story, the narrative lobe of Hampi is very, very rich. There's so many stories which are possible of Hampi that it becomes difficult to choose what stories to share in a span of 1 hour. But also the idea is that rather than me sharing stories, I wanted people to experience the essence of being in Hampi, which is why we are showing these videos. And I have to give you this disclaimer at this point that these videos are not made by us. These are videos that we've taken off YouTube. In fact, we are playing them from YouTube. And they're all videos put together by various independent artists. And we'll share the links to the videos in the comments or in the text probably after the video ends, so that you can check out these videos for yourself. But we don't take any credits for the videos. The videos belong to the independent artists who have created them. This video, for example, is called Hanuman of Hampi. And of course, we will give credits and we will share all the links to these videos in our post after the video gets over. And the videos are on public domain. So you guys can watch it, and we're streaming them off YouTube right at the moment. So as we said, you know, the last time we did a virtual heritage walk, all I did was share stories of the British residency of Hyderabad, and I got feedback that it would be much nicer if we could share videos or if we could share pictures of these places as I speak. So we're experimenting with this format today, where I'm giving the videos and the visuals the precedence over my stories. And I think since most of us are locked up or locked down in our homes and in our places, it would be a nice experience to visually transport ourselves into the realm of these places and see what it is like to be in Hampi. And my stories or whatever I'm sharing orally is only going to add a layer to that experience. And it's not just about my stories, but I want to show the visuals this time. So if you're able to hear everything I say without any problems, and if you think that there's not been any issues so far. Can we have the pictures, please? I'd like to go to the first picture. Let's go to the first picture, and I will, yeah. So this is the landscape of Hampi. Typically, when you go to a hilltop in Hampi, and there are dozens and dozens of hilltops in Hampi that you can climb for sunrises or sunsets, and the views that you get when you climb these hilltops, either during sunrise or sunset or any time of the day, but sunrise and sunset is especially spectacular, is mind blowing. I would say that I've not experienced sunrises or sunsets or views like this anywhere else in the world. Not that I've traveled a lot, but in the little that I've traveled, I've not seen this kind of views anywhere else. And this geological unique feature of Hampi, of this, it's kind of a landscape, is what gives Hampi its essential character, according to me. And the reason why Hampi has fascinated people throughout the centuries as a spiritual site, as a Pampa Kshetra. And history has it that Pampa Kshetra has existed for more than 3,000 years, for more than 300 centuries, for more than, say, 30 centuries, people have been coming to this pilgrim site to worship this Pampa Kshetra. So this landscape has fascinated people throughout. Now, Ramayana was based here. A major part of Ramayana was also based in this place. So the writers of Ramayana definitely were, I mean, if you believe Ramayana actually happened, this gives it all the more importance and significance. But if you believe Ramayana was written by Valmiki and inspired by incidents that happened, the fact that this landscape is so mythical is clearly, and it's clearly evidenced by the fact that it was so inspiring that the writer of Ramayana decided to set a whole episode of Ramayana in this place. And unlike other places, for example, Ayodhya or Rameshwaram or Chitrakoot, the other episodes of Ramayana do not have as much association with real places as Hampi does. In Hampi, you have every episode of Kishkinda Kand associated with a geographical site. And the names of the hilltops in Hampi, for example, Malyavanta, uh, um, you have Rishimukha, you have Malyavant, you have Matanga, you have Gandhamardana Parvata. All of these places, the real places in Hampi, are places that are referenced in the Ramayana. When I went to Hampi for the first time, to hear all these names, Gandhamardana Parvata, Hemakuta Parvata, Malyavanta Raghunatha Parvata, Rishimukha Parvata, it somehow felt that I already knew all these places because I've read the Ramayana and these places were coming back to me. So Ramayana, the physical association of the geographical places of Ramayana, the birthplace of Hanuma, for example, Anjana Parvata, Anjanatri, the place, the hilltop on which Ramayana was born. Sorry, not Ramayana, I meant Hanuman. The birthplace of Hanuman being a geographical place, the place where Vali was ruling, the place where Sugriva had to go and take refuge after Vali started attacking him, is again another place, physical place that you can go and visit in Hampi. The place from where Rama fired an arrow or shot an arrow at Vali, while Vali and Sugriva were fighting with each other, is again a geographical place where you can see the footprints of Rama and Lakshmana at a place. So this kind of association of the mythology of Ramayana with a geographical physical site is unheard. I mean, I've not seen it anywhere else, and that's another reason why I think Hampi is very, very unique. So talking about the geology, the physical aspect of Hampi, the geological landscape of Hampi is so unique, is so special, is so beautiful that it gives so much beauty to all these stories, and it also explains why Hampi has had such a significance as a spiritual site, as a mythological site, today, of course, as a tourist site, but also as a site which was the capital of a rich, illustrious, and a glorious kingdom that ruled at least the whole of peninsular India for many, many centuries, is quite understandable. And Pampa is a beautiful river. Pampa is called Tungabhadra today. It's a spectacular river, beautiful river that snakes its way through the terrain. And I've not seen that kind of a sight of a river snaking through rock-strewn boulders and hills and landscapes. So that's just to give you an overview. And the reason why Hampi has such a unique terrain is because they say Hampi is the oldest landmass in the whole world. Hampi is a part of the Deccan Plateau, and Deccan Plateau per se, if you're from Hyderabad, you probably would know that parts of Hyderabad has similar landscape. Places like Banjara Hills, Khajagoda, Maulali, you would find similar landscape with boulders strewn across the hills. Now, because Hyderabad is also a part of the same plateau, which extends all the way to Hampi. So the Hampi, the Deccan Plateau, of which Hampi is a part, and Hampi in particular, was created sometime about 3.5 billion years ago, and is the landmass, the only landmass probably in the whole world, which is not which has not had any tectonic action, which means there were no major earthquakes which happened here with Hampi as the epicenter, or with this part of the world as the epicenter. There have been no earthquakes, no volcanic eruptions in the last 3.5 billion years. That makes it one of the Earth's most stablest landmass anywhere in the world. And that is the reason why you find the hills, the boulders, the rocks, the hillocks exactly the way they were. Of course, there's a lot of erosion. The soil is gone away, but this landmass probably at one point in time was under the ground. But as the erosion happened and the rocks started coming out, the tectonic shifts did not happen. There was no major movement in the tectonic plates through earthquakes or volcanic eruptions or any sort of movements. And hence, this is the stablest, the most untouched landmass anywhere in the world. And that makes it very, very unique. They say that if you have a phobia of earthquakes, or if you want to be in a place where you're 100% sure of not being in an earthquake ever, Hampi is the place, because this place has not seen earthquakes in the last 3.5 billion years, and it probably will never will because of whatever reasons geologically. So that's just to give you an overview of the terrain of Hampi before we go into the next picture, which is the earliest settlements in Hampi. The oldest temple in Hampi is the Virupaksha temple, which we showed you some time back. The Virupaksha temple, the Gopuram that you see today is about 1,000 years old. The temple itself is believed to be 3,000 years old. Some accounts say it's 2,000, some accounts say it's 3,000. But the Gopuram is more than 1,000 years old. The temple itself has been a place of worship for 2,000, 3,000 years old. But human settlement in Hampi has been much, much longer than that. These are Neolithic cave paintings from a village called Anegundi to the north of the Pampa River. And incidentally, Anegundi was the place where the Vijayanagara dynasty was first instituted. It was not in Vijayanagara, the Hampi that we visit today and see all the ruins. That was not the place where Harihara Raya and Bukharaya, the founders of the Hampi dynasty, they did not establish the dynasty in Hampi Vijayanagara directly. They first established the dynasty in a place called Anegundi to the north of the river. Now, this was their capital for a few decades. But once the Bahmani dynasty started becoming powerful and they started attacking from the north, they decided to move their capital south of the river, because the river would give them an additional layer of protection against these attacks. And hence they chose Hampi or Vijayanagara, the present kingdom where we get to see the ruins. So before that shift happened, the capital was, of course, in another place called Anegundi. We will show you Anegundi in a little while. Anegundi literally means a bend, the elephant gorge. It was called the Elephant Gorge because the river naturally took a bend at this part of its course, and because of that bend, there was a gorge, which meant that there was a deep water in this part, and elephants would go there and take a bath in the river, and hence this bend in the river, this gorge, was called Anegundi. Ane in Kannada means elephant, and Gundi means the gorge, or the little bend in the river. So Anegundi, the site where the Vijayanagara dynasty was initially established, is also the site, close to it is also the site where you get to see these Neolithic cave paintings, which are believed to be 10,000 years old. Now, they're not one or two sites, but there's several, about 8 to 10 sites, different kinds of caves where you get to see these kind of cave paintings. This is one of them. And can we have the next picture, please? These paintings mostly are of animals. This one, for example, is an ox. Sometimes you find different kinds of animals. Next picture. But there's one curious thing that you get to see in these cave paintings that people are not able to explain. And there are various conspiracy theories about this. This is in a cave very close to Anegundi. And this is a circle, and inside the circle, there are several other circles. And inside the inner circle, you see some people sitting. Now, some people say that this is a spaceship. Some people say this is evidence that the extraterrestrials have been visiting our planet from 10,000 years ago. Now, that's a conspiracy theory, and you can check videos on YouTube where people say this is proof that aliens exist, and aliens have been visiting India from 10,000 years ago. But whatever this is a curious cave painting. I mean, nobody knows what it is. It probably is a circle with a lot of circles inside of it, and a few people sitting inside the inner circle. But whatever it is, it's a curious thing, and it has fascinated me when I go there and when I look at it, and when I realize that this was painted 10,000 years ago by people who were sitting there, and you're watching it 10,000 years later from the same place. It's a very philosophical moment for me, and I love going to these caves and watching these paintings. So there's been existence of people living in this landscape for at least 10,000 years, and these cave paintings are proof enough. Let's go to the next picture. The earliest known structure in this part is this temple, not the Gopuram itself. What you see here is the Gopuram, but behind the Gopuram is the actual temple of the Virupaksha. In the foreground, you see me lying down on a rock. This was taken a few years ago when we climbed a hill called Matanga Parvata. Matanga Parvata is right. If I'm taking the picture from somewhere, if somebody was taking this picture, he's actually standing at the temple on Matanga Hill and taking this picture. So the beyond is the temple, and that temple is a kshetra called Pampa Kshetra. Now, Pampa Kshetra, as I said, is probably 2,000, 3,000 years old. It's a very, very ancient pilgrim site. And people have been coming to this pilgrimage site for centuries and for ages. I mean, for as long as people can remember. And Pampa Kshetra is a very old pilgrim site, one of the oldest. If you can think of Amarkantak, Narmada, if you can think of Kashi, if you can think of probably, I'm thinking of what are the oldest pilgrim sites in India. Now, Pampa Kshetra is one of the oldest recorded, documented, oldest known pilgrim sites anywhere in India. And Pampa is actually the name of the river. Today it's called Tungabhadra. The older name of Tungabhadra was Pampa. And since this pilgrimage site is on the banks of the river Pampa, it was called Pampa Kshetra. There's a mythological story about who Pampa was and who Virupaksha was. It's starting to rain over here, but it's fine. So Pampa Kshetra is, at least as far as that we know, is one of the older parts of Hampi. I'll just give me a second. Yeah. So the picture that you're seeing at the moment is a painting, which is the recreation of the bazaar of Hampi. This is the main bazaar of Hampi. Can we go back to the previous picture, please, Ritika? Yeah, so I have protection from the rainfall here. So I was talking about Pampa Kshetra, and so Pampa is the river Tungabhadra. Tungabhadra, the river actually starts as two different streams in Shimoga. The two streams are called Tunga and Bhadra. These are two independent channels which merge together in a place called Kudali, I believe, in Shimoga. I've been there. There's a beautiful temple, ancient temple site at the junction of the Tunga and Bhadra, two rivers which combine and become the Tungabhadra. Tungabhadra again is a distributary of, is it a tributary or a distributary? It's a tributary of Krishna. Tungabhadra merges with the Krishna river a little forward. The old name of Pampa is of Tungabhadra is Pampa, as I said, and Hampi actually derives its name from Pampa, because Pampa Kshetra, because Kannadigas, they use ha for the sound of pa. For example, palu in Telugu becomes halu in Kannada, right? So pa and ha are interchanged in the local language, and hence Pampa Kshetra became Hampa Kshetra, and it became Hampi. The story goes that Virupaksha, another name for Shiva, Virupa means slanted or abnormal, and Aksh means eye. Virupaksha means the one with the abnormal eye, or the one with the vertical eye, or the third eye is Virupaksha, and that's another name for Shiva. So Pampa is a form of Parvati, the consort of Shiva, and she does a deep penance to attain Shiva, and then Shiva takes the form of Virupaksha, and he actually descends onto the earth, and that is how the Pampa Kshetra has come to be. So the river Tungabhadra is given the feminine form of Pampa, the consort of Shiva, and Shiva himself has taken roots, and he descended onto the earth, and he becomes the Virupaksha of this temple. That's the mythological story associated with this pilgrim site. So that's to tell you about the the mythology of this Pampa Kshetra. Across the river Pampa, on the northern side, there's another site called Pampa Sarovara. Pampa Sarovara is the place where Shabari is believed to have lived. So when Rama comes, Shabari gives him berries, which he eats first to see that there are no worms or insects inside, and then she feeds Rama with those fruits. So that episode is believed to have happened in another place called Pampa Sarovar to the north of the river. So that again is a very ancient pilgrim site, which has been visited by pilgrims from ages. Because of the rain, sometimes the signal goes weak. So I'm hoping you're still able to follow what I'm saying. I'll just check the chat very quickly. If okay, so I can see that I'm getting messages. Is it different from Pampa Kshetra mentioned in some stories? Pampa Sarovar is different. Pampa Sarovar is to the north of the river, as I said, and Pampa Kshetra is to the south of the river, which is the temple of Virupaksha. You would love this. Okay, so thank you. Right, so can we have the next picture, please? So I'm just doing a quick check. If in case there's any issue with my audio or with my video, please drop a message so that I know, because there's no way I would know if the signal has stopped. And especially because it is raining, it's highly possible that the video could go off. So can somebody give me a heads up and say, yes, very clear. Thank you, Mukesh. Thank you. I'm glad that it's seamless. All right, so this picture that you see is the Hampi Bazaar. Now, at its peak, Hampi controlled a lot of foreign trade with Western countries, including Portugal in those days, including the West Arabia, Portugal, Western Europe, and on the east, of course, a lot of countries: Indonesia, Thailand, Japan. So, since Deccan was the center of a trade route called the spice route, there was a lot of trade which was happening with the West as well as the East. So if you either see this painting, you'll actually, if you see it closely, you will find that there are some East Asian people and there are some European people as well in the Hampi Bazaar. In the far end, you probably see the Virupaksha temple. In front of the Virupaksha temple, for about a kilometer, they extended a market called the Hampi Bazaar, the Hampi market. And this was a stone market built with stone structures. And it's a historic market. On both sides of the roads, there were people selling all sorts of things, including diamonds. And Domingo Pais, when he came to Vijayanagara Empire, he writes that he saw people selling diamonds by weight, because the Deccan Plateau was known as a diamond, it was full of diamond mines. And you probably heard of the Golconda mines of Kollur, which was part of the Golconda Empire. So from the same mine, probably the Vijayanagara dynasty also used to sell a lot of diamonds, a lot of precious stones, and almost had a virtual monopoly over the diamonds until that time. So can we have the next picture, if there's another picture? Yeah, so this is a small map of the experiences of Hampi that we created some time back. We just thought I would show you these. Let's go to the video. Let's go to video number 2 or video number 3, wherever we are. And since I said this is an experiment, I will try and give commentary to what we're seeing so that I could probably take you to these places virtually. So what you're seeing right now is the Matanga Parvata. Matanga Parvata is a beautiful historic, beautiful hilltop on which there's an abandoned temple. I think now it's Matanga Temple. Let's go back to Matanga Temple. I would like to share some mythology of this temple. Yeah, so let's pause for a moment. Yeah, let's pause here. This is a good view, right? So this is Matanga Parvata. This is named after Rishi Matanga. Rishi Matanga has a very interesting story associated with him. You know, this entire terrain was once the Vanara kingdom. Now, when we say Vanara basically means a monkey. But to be more accurate, these were not Vanars. Vanars would mean monkeys. These were actually Kapis. And Kapi, according to the Hindu mythology, is a race of people who are half humans and half monkeys. This was a humanoid race of people with human brains and human physiology, but monkey faces. So these are not monkeys or Vanars as we would like to believe. But often the word Vanar and Kapi is used interchangeably, but to be more accurate, these were kapis. This was a different race of people according to mythology, of which Hanuman was one of them. Of course, Hanuman was a kapi. And some people believe that today we know of the Yeti in the Himalayan mountains. So people compare the Yeti, mythical Yeti in the Himalayan mountains, with the race of Kapis and say that since Hanuman is believed to, Hanuman doesn't die. In mythology, Hanuman doesn't have death. So it is believed that Hanuman is still alive. And according to mythology, after the entire Ramayana episodes are over, he walks off into the Himalayan mountains. So the belief that these Kapis have moved into the Himalayas and Hanuman is still alive in the Himalayas, a lot of people believe that the Yeti race is the Kapi race, and this is a humanoid, half human, half monkey kind of a race. So this was the terrain where Wali was ruling, and Wali was the king of this race of humanoid monkeys, the Vanara kingdom basically. And Wali had a younger brother called Sugriva, and Wali was the king. You probably know the story of Ramayana, where Wali and Sugriva were two brothers, and there was a fight between both the brothers. I will not have to repeat the story because I believe most of you do know the story. If you do not know the story, you probably can message and ask me, and I will do a quick story of what happened with Wali and Sugriva. But the story of Matanga is that Matanga was a rishi who used to live on top of this hill, and he would spend all his time in meditation and in dhyana. So he was doing his tapasya on this hilltop, and he was on his tapasya, doing his penance on this hilltop. And there was once a Rakshasa. It's not a Rakshasa. I'm not able to remember the name of this particular Rakshasa. This is a buffalo demon. And I'm sorry, I'm not able to recollect the name, but this buffalo demon, let me see if I can recollect the name. Or if somebody knows the name of this demon, you can just tell me. There's a buffalo demon which attacks the kingdom. And Wali was an extremely powerful man. So the Wali would fight the demons and throw them out. And once this buffalo demon came, and Wali was so pissed, so angry with this buffalo demon that he beat this demon to pulp. And then since this was a buffalo, he took the buffalo demon by the tail, swirled it around, and then threw it as far as he could. Now this buffalo went and landed on this hilltop where Matanga Rishi was doing his penance. When the buffalo landed with a thud on the rocks, and when it landed with such impact on the rocks, of course it died, and there was some blood which splurged, and some of these drops of blood went and fell on the face of Matanga Rishi, who was in deep penance. Now this blood was from the buffalo demon which was thrown by Wali on this hill, and because of the impact, there was blood which splattered. So when Matanga Rishi realized that something fell on him, some droplets fell on him, he opened his eyes, he broke his penance, he opened his eyes, and he saw what was on his forehead, and he noticed that it was blood, and he was very, very angry at the person who did this because his penance had been interrupted. So in his anger, he cursed Wali. He says he cursed Wali that whoever did this will be burnt to ashes or something like that. Now Wali immediately came and he apologized. He realized his mistake, that by mistake this buffalo went and fell on the Matanga hill where this rishi is in penance, and his penance was disturbed. So he requested the rishi Matanga to forgive him, and he said, I did this mistake without realizing that you were here and without realizing that this would fall here. So please forgive me. Of course, you have cursed me, but is there a way that you could reduce the curse? And Matanga Rishi said, okay, the curse is that if you come any close to this hill, then you will burn into ashes. I've cursed you that you will burn into ashes, but now I reduce it, and I tell you that if you come anywhere close to this hill, this Matanga hill, you will reduce to ashes. So this hill called the Matanga hill was a protective field, right? And Wali could never, it was a protective field for people who wanted to escape from Wali, especially Sugriva. When there was a fight between Wali and Sugriva, where would Sugriva go to escape from Wali? He came and settled on this hill because this was the hill where Wali could never come. So this was like a protective place for Sugriva to live. So if you know the story of Wali and Sugriva, Sugriva had to run away, had to flee from Wali because Wali was chasing him and attacking him. And Sugriva eventually came and settled on this hill. So this is the story of the Matanga hill, and it's a beautiful hilltop. The view from here for sunrise or sunset is spectacular. If you go to Hampi, this is one experience that I would definitely recommend very, very highly. And
From here, if you stand here, you can see the entire Ramayana happen all around you. The place where Bali was living, the place where, I mean, of course, Sugriva was living on this hill. And Sugriva was a good friend of Hanuman. And it was Hanuman who took Rama to Sugriva. And there was a pact signed between Rama and Sugriva that Sugriva would help Rama in fighting the Lanka, in creating a bridge, fighting Lanka, and getting Sita back. In return, Rama would kill Vali and make Sugriva the king of the Vanara kingdom. So that's a story that happened on Matanga Hill, and Matanga Hill has that beautiful story associated with it. Likewise, every place in Hampi, if you go there, there's a story associated with it, taking you back to the mythological period of the Ramayana. There's not much association of Mahabharata, but yeah, I mean, each temple has a Sthala Puranam. Each place has a mythological story associated with it. So, so these are ancient temples, and there are scores and scores of them all over the place, and each temple has a story. If you see the architecture of these temples, this is very typical South Indian architecture. Most of the Chola temples of Tamil Nadu or the Rashtrakuta temples would have similar architecture. This is Pampa River that is flowing through, and you can see on the far left, that's a hill. That is Anjanadri, the place where Hanuman was born, on the far left, which we just saw. This, of course, was probably shot at a time when there was no flow in the river, which is why you see a lot of green. Otherwise, this river usually flows, and it's much more scenic than what you're seeing here. Can we move to the next video? Because this is just nature. Or just let's forward and see. Let's just move a little forward and see other places of importance. Oh, wait, stop here. Let's stop here. Let's go a little backward. Let's go a little backward, please. Yeah. Yeah, that's right here. So a little backward, please. A little more backward. Yes. So even backward. So there's a place that I wanted you to see. On the left, you can see a structure right here. There's a structure on the left you can see. This is called Purandara Dasa Mandapa. Purandara Dasa was a sage. He's a mystical poet. If you are from Karnataka, you would probably have heard of the Purandara Dasa. This is a mandapa. This is a pavilion basically built for Purandara Dasa, who would sit here and compose most of his poems. And I've been here when there's more flow. When there's more flow, the entire structure goes underwater. This is there's a time when the water has been dammed up. Upstream, there's a dam called Tungabhadra Dam. And during the summer months, they dam up the water. So this is how the river looks. But after the monsoon, if you come back here, the dam opens the gates, so you see a lot more water flowing through this. On the far right, if you notice, you see a lot of pillars. They look like little tiny sticks. This is actually an ancient bridge over the river. Now, only the pillars of the bridge remain. The bridge itself doesn't exist anymore. So we can go through. Let's keep going forward, and I think this video will take you closer to those pillars. And I actually crossed the river at these places. When I go to Hampi with my people, we actually hike in these parts, and it's quite an experience to be jumping on these boulders and crossing the river. Okay, so so these are if you see the pillars on the left, these are the pillars of an ancient bridge that was used to cross the river at this point. And across the river at multiple places, there are historic bridges, because the kingdom of Vijayanagara spanned both sides of the river, north and the south. If there are more places of construction, hello. So these are all borders and rivers and stones. Let's see if there are any temples or any structures. Yeah, so let's keep this. So that temple that you saw was called Kodan Rama Temple. It's on the banks of the river once again. It's a Rama temple. Now, Hampi is unique as for another reason. Most of the pilgrim places in India are either associated with the Vaishnavite sect of Hinduism or the Shaivite sect of Hinduism. Either they are Vaishnavite sites or Shaivite sites. Hampi is unique because you have both the Shaivite as well as the Vaishnavite shrines, because Virupaksha is a Shaivite center where it's believed that that is gone off to Gokarna. Let's start another video. This is Hampi is unique because not only do you have Shaivite places, Virupaksha temple is a Shaivite center. But you also, let's stop this video. We'll start it together. But also because it's associated with Ramayana, you have a lot of places of Vaishnavite importance of Rama's, Rama temples in Hampi. So it's unique in that sense that both Shaivites and Vaishnavites and Lingaites go to Hampi for pilgrimage. And I showed you Purandaradasa Mandapa some time back. Likewise, people like Vidyaranya Maharshi. Vidyaranya Maharshi was actually he was a sage who was actually the mentor of Hakka and Bukka, Hariharaya and Bukkaraya, the founders of the Vijayanagara dynasty. And he was also based out of here. So there's a sect of Vidyaranya Maharshi as well. And Hampi is a pilgrimage site even for those people. Let's start this video and see, and I will just keep going, giving commentary for these things as it goes along. This is a channel of, this is just the irrigation channel of Hampi that they've used. Hello? I think, yeah. Right, this is from Hemakutta Hill. What you're seeing right now is right across from the Virupaksha temple. These are the steps that you used to climb to Matanga Hill. And this is from the other side. I think it's going a little too fast. This is the Virupaksha temple once again. This is called the Mahanavami Dibba. Mahanavami Dibba is a place from where Sri Krishna Dev Raya or the Vijayanagara kings would watch the Dasara performances. I think I'm facing some issues with the internet at this point, but we'll continue. Right, let's stop here. Right, so what you see here is the temple bazaar of Achyutarama temple. So this is very typical of the temple architecture of the Vijayanagara kingdom, that every temple would have a strip like this in front. This is right in front of the Achyutarama temple. And the temple itself is a huge complex, sometimes spanning several acres. And in front of the temple would be a 1 kilometer of a strip of land, very, very wide and 1 kilometer long, with bazaars on both the sides. On both the sides of the road, you would have structures, pillared pavilions, which were separated by equal increments and made into different rooms from where people would sell all sorts of things. So this was a bazaar. And these bazaars were the center of all the life. These were socio-cultural spaces where people would come not just for buying and selling, but also for musical performances, for meeting people. So these temples were the centerpiece of socio-cultural life of the Vijayanagara kingdom. And hence, every temple complex, be it the Achyutarama temple, be it the Virupaksha temple, be it the Vitla temple, be it the Krishna temple, every temple has a similar kind of an architecture. And close by, you will see pushkarnis or kalyanis or stepwells and water bodies. So, when this is actually taken from top of Matanga Hill, or from the way up to the Matanga Hill. And this is one side, the view from one side where you see the space in front of Achyutarama temple. Keep going. If there's anything else that I see, I would ask you to stop and we can talk about it a bit. Yeah, this is Kamalapura village. This is far away from Hampi. Hampi actually spans about 54 square kilometers. It's huge and it's scattered over a wide area of space. So pardon me. So this is Chintamani. This is actually near the village Anigundi. These are beautiful sites, beautiful temples. Some of them are completely ruined, and when you go there, you're the only person sometimes. And the architecture is just mind-blowing. Okay, I see that there are a lot more messages, so I'm just going to take a quick break to see any messages. Is there the team? How Virupaksha temple survived the atrocities? Dunduvi is the Buffalo demo. Thank you. Nice shot, so yeah. All right, so yeah, there's about 10 minutes left, and if you have any questions specific to what I discussed until now, You can comment and I can respond to those questions. I can use the 10 minutes to share a story or two, but quickly let me see if there are any questions, and if there are no questions, I'll share one or two stories of Hampi. How long would it take to climb up? It takes about half an hour, 20-30 minutes, depending on how fit you are. Is there a tomb of the King Krishna Devaraya? Yes, there is a 64-pillared mandapa. This is near Anigundi. From the village Anigundi, when you go to the banks, there's a temple called Chintamani. Chintamani is the place, is a cave called Chintamani. This was the place where Hanuman met Rama. And from this place, if you follow the banks of the river, there's a 64-pillared mandapa, and this is believed to be the tomb of Sri Krishna Devaraya. Now, Hindus, for example, you know that they burn and they don't bury. So when you say tomb, what you have actually is a structure commemorating Sri Krishna Devaraya. And that 64-pillared temple, each pillar standing for one of the 64 art forms that he patronized, exists. Yes, it is Sri Krishna Devaraya's pillared, 64-pillared mandapa. This, let's stop right here. This is an epic, iconic, chariot. This is a replica of Konark. In Konark, you have a sun temple. In that sun temple, you have a chariot of the sun god. Sri Krishna Devaraya had gone to Odisha. He fought with the Vijayagajapati Raja of Odisha, and then he conquered and he came back. And when he came back, he wanted to create a replica of what he saw in Konark. So this temple, Vithala temple, was actually built after his victory over Odisha, after the Gajapati king of Odisha. So this temple of victory, called Vithala temple, had this chariot, and this is a miniature model. When I say miniature, it is huge, but what I mean, it's a mini model of what he saw in the Konark Sun Temple. Now, if you see a 100 rupee note, or the new 100 rupee note, sorry, not 150, 50 rupee denomination of Indian currency today, the new one, the blue one, you have this on one side of the note. So actually, this chariot wheel actually revolves. So if you go close and if you put enough effort, it turns. So even though it is stone, it is kept in a way that it rotates. So yeah, we can continue with the video. And I think we have about 10 minutes left. Who rediscovered anything about Vithala temple? Suggest a few books. Who discovered Hampi? English explorers. Okay, so I'll take some of those questions. In 1910 or 1911, around that time, there was a British archaeologist who was exploring the ruins of Hampi. And by the 1910s and 1920s, Hampi was completely abandoned, completely in ruins. So in Vithala temple, there were families of bears living. Bears had taken over, and there were entire families of these bears which were living inside the Vithala temple. And in certain of these temple ruins, you had wild animals, leopards, all sorts of animals living inside of them. So it was completely forgotten, because the Battle of Talikota, which happened in 1646, was the end of the Vijayanagara Empire, and the Bahmanis, they burned the whole place down. So it was not only that the kingdom was occupied by the Bahmanis, but the Bahmani dynasty actually actively destroyed everything, massacred people. That was the end of the Vijayanagara dynasty. It was one big dead city. Nothing was remaining. Of course, these stone structures were very difficult to break, and nor could they burn. So the only thing that remains today are the huge stone structures which could not have been demolished by the Bahmanis. But for all reasons, in 1646, 1336 and 1648, I believe, 1646 or 48, I don't know, 47, I believe, yeah. So the Battle of Talikota, after that, Hampi was completely in ruins, and it was completely forgotten for many, many centuries. People still visited the Virupaksha temple. That was an ancient site, and people were going there. But Hampi was more than just Virupaksha temple. There was 50-60 square kilometers of area which had temples. Today, of course, there are about 5,000 monuments in this 50 square kilometer area. 500 of them are UNESCO World Heritage recognized monuments. But about 5,000 of these ancient structures are now identified from the times of the Vijayanagara Empire. So it was in the late 90s, I think 96, that the Hampi World Heritage Havama, Hampi World Heritage authority, management authority, Hampi World Heritage Management Authority was institutioned, and since then active efforts have been taken to preserve the Hampi World Heritage Area. Thankfully, Hampi falls in a district which is one of the most underdeveloped cities in Karnataka and in India. And Hampi is in a place where it is about 800 kilometers from any major city. There are no cities around Hampi. It's in the middle of a plateau, far away from any city. And Koppal district and Ballari district. Ballari district is one of the most backward districts in India. And Koppal district to the north, of course, again, Hampi is split. North of the river is Koppal district, south of the river is the Ballari district. And both these districts are very, very backward. And thankfully, because they're backward, Hampi survived. Had these places not been backward, had it been closer to any city, probably all these things would have been lost to us by now. So, I mean, thank the fortunes that the underdevelopment of these places has made sure that these places have remained intact. Today, it is protected by World Heritage Authority, so no construction can happen, and the core area of Hampi is protected by the World Heritage Department, Management Authority. What you see on the screen now is a Ugra Narasimha, Lakshmi Narasimha statue. It's a beautiful, it's a megalithic statue. It's made of one stone. The whole Narasimha is made of one, it's carved out of one stone. And there used to be a Lakshmi sitting on the lap in the original. If you see, there's a little breakage on the left. So that was Lakshmi sitting on the lap of Narasimha, and that was broken. But the statue itself still remains, and it's huge. So if you go there, you probably won't even reach until the legs of the Narasimha that you see here. So yeah, we can. So I think that's. I think about 3-5 minutes are left. Any info about the musical pillars of the Vittalatim? Talikota Var is in 1565. Yeah. Thanks for the dates. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's time to close. There is about 3-5 minutes left, I think. But let me share the story of how this place was chosen by Harihara Raya and Bukkaraya to establish the Vijayanagara dynasty. Harihara Raya and Bukkaraya are popularly called Hakka and Bukka. These were two brothers, and if you know, these brothers were working in the Kampali kingdom. These were actually military soldiers in the Kampali kingdom. Kampali kingdom is about 1,800 kilometers from Hampi and was a Hindu kingdom in those days. And when the Tughlaqs attacked, the Delhi Sultanate attacked the Kampali kingdom and conquered Kampali, the city. And these brothers were taken as soldiers back to Delhi, and they converted to Islam, Hakka and Bukka, Harihara and Bukkaraya, and they started working with the Delhi Sultanate. Now, when they won the confidence of the Delhi Sultanate, they were sent back to the Deccan as governors. They were sent back to Kampali kingdom as governors to rule this place so that they could expand the Delhi Sultanate in the south. But after coming back to the south, Hakka and Bukka reconverted to Hinduism and decided to establish a Hindu dynasty in response to the Delhi Sultanate, which was trying to make inroads into the south. So not only did they establish a dynasty called the Vijayanagara dynasty, but they also expanded their base. They occupied other kingdoms and they extended their kingdom to include most of the peninsular India, at least between Narmada and Kaveri. So all of this came under the Vijayanagara dynasty within Hakka and Bukka, Harihara Raya and Bukkaraya. So Harihara Raya and Bukkaraya, they were inspired by sage Vidyaranya. They had met Vidyaranya, and Vidyaranya inspired them to reconvert to Hinduism and again start a new dynasty and establish a glorious rule. So there's a story about how Harihara and Bukka, they were traveling, trying to find a place to establish the new kingdom. They were looking for a site to make their capital. And while they were on this expedition, they were going on their horses and they had some dogs along with them. When they reached this place called Anigundi, they noticed a curious phenomena that happened. There were some local rabbits which were chasing their army military dogs. And they found it very curious that a small creature like a rabbit was so brave that it was chasing the royal dogs, and the dogs were running away from the rabbits with their tails between their legs. So the king said, this is very curious that even the rabbits here are chasing our dogs. If the rabbits could be so brave, so courageous, then there's something in the waters of the river, Pampa River, Tungabhadra River here, that is making them so courageous that they're willing to take on animals so many times bigger than themselves. So they said, this is a sign, this is an omen that we are going to fight the mighty Delhi Sultanate, the Bahmani Sultanate, and Sultanate's much bigger, much more powerful than ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to be very brave and courageous. And
I'm just going to guess for.
yeah. So they've taken this incident as an omen, and they said this is where we're going to establish our dynasty. And Anagundi was chosen as a place. So they built a fort which still exists, the Anagundi Fort. And that's the story behind how the dynasty was established in Hampi Vijayanagara, or Anagundi, the exact site. Now, this story has been borrowed by many other places. For example, Ahmedabad has a similar story. But if you trace historically, the story originated here. It was appropriated by Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad believes that their city was also founded because of a king whose dog was chased by a local rabbit, and Sabarmati River. So, and likewise, there's at least 1 or 2 stories of Rajasthan where they use the same story and say, the king established his kingdom here because of this story. But if you trace the story back, this is where it actually happened, or at least the mythology actually, or the story, the folk history actually traces its origin to Hampi Vijayanagara. All right, so yeah, that was a humble attempt by me to share a few stories of Hampi and take you virtually, visually through video stories, pictures to Hampi. And this was an experiment, as I said, and I had a lot of challenges because of bad internet connectivity here. But I hope we could engage you, entertain you for an hour. And please do comment and let us know how it was for you. And if you think it went well, thank you. Yeah. So thank you, guys. So I'm reading all the messages. So if you found it enriching, please share in the message for us so that we're also enthused to do more such sessions in the future. This was an experiment, as I said. But if you liked it, if you found it enriching, we will continue to do this. In fact, in Hampi itself, we can have a lot more sessions, and we could plan it much better in the future. But and right now I'm in this place called Mussoorie, which is a historic hill station. And the more I'm reading, the more I'm exploring Mussoorie, I'm fascinated by the kind of stories that I'm getting to unravel here. So maybe on one of these days, I'll do a live virtual heritage walk here in Mussoorie, a British hill station that was established as far back as 1827. And fascinating stories, fascinating architecture, fascinating heritage, and beautiful place. So if you're enjoying this, if you'd like to continue to see these kind of things, we'd be willing to continue these engagements. And I'd like to thank India Heritage Walks for this opportunity. And they've been very gracious and very supportive in collaborating with us and helping us reach out to a lot of people. So I do hope this session was enriching for you. We will close, but keep messages coming in so that we know that you've benefited from this session, and will give us a lot more enthusiasm to continue to do these sessions in the future. Thank you so much. Hope that was helpful. And yeah, it was a very spontaneous, off-the-cuff kind of a session. I just thought we'll let the videos play and I will give live commentary. And Hampi has been a very special place to me personally. And it's one of my favorite places in the world. And because I lived in Hyderabad for a long time, I would go there very, very frequently. And each time I would just go there, spend a week. I've probably spent months altogether in different phases. And I've explored every bit of Hampi. I just spent days just walking around the ruins, reading books. So I love doing that. So I've explored Hampi. And I love it. I like taking people to Hampi and showing it around. And of course, doing it virtually also was a great experience. Thank you so much. And I'd also like to thank Ritika, who was behind the tech support. She was putting the videos and the pictures together for you guys to watch. So thank you. And please let us know through the messages how you find the video. And thank you, India Heritage Walks. Thank you, Ritika. And thank you, everybody, for coming, joining, and watching this session. Big thank you. Gratitude. Have a good time. Stay safe.